Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George Affleck.
And it's time for
UnSpun. Now look, 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 look.
Look at what?
You and I talked about this.
Oh gosh.
Word,
Oh wait,
look.
I know. Look, George.
Make it stop.
We watched the Dem debate. We're going to talk about
everywhere.
it everywhere.
It's everywhere. This word. Anyways.
When somebody wants to make their point and they say, look, before their statement, it's condescending.
It's condescending. It's basically a replacement for
Yeah, it's a crutch, is what we
I
call it.
think Obama started it, but it just bugs me.
He does it more as a throwaway, like, look.
Yeah.
But Joe Biden is like, look.
It's patronizing.
Yeah. So we'll get to the Dem debate, but I want to start with protests. Here we are. Hold on, Oppenheimer Park update. Nothing's really changed because it's been knocked off the headlines, Oppenheimer Park camp.
Yes, although there was some announcement in the budget we can get into about some kind of area that's like San Francisco or something that they're going to try and do or something. I don't know. So it was a bit of the budget.
So still camps.
A camp, a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 3-month camp that you can stay in, and they'll feed you endless amounts of money or food. I
talked to Chris, the girl with the feather, Chrissy Brent. I interviewed her.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, from Oppenheimer Park.
Okay.
Because I wanted to get the perspective.
Oppenheimer Park and every other protest.
Because I was asking her about the other protest, but she called in, because I was on radio at the time, she called in from Oppenheimer Park. I'm like, so you're in multiple, like what?
Or do you have a twin?
No, she basically said that she was not protesting specifically about Coastal GasLink when she was at the legislature. She was protesting on behalf of much wider, broader, greater picture. So that's what happens here in British Columbia. It seems that one specific movement or activated protest becomes a broader rage event.
By rage, that sounds like a party.
No, that's a rave, isn't it? I was thinking that mad people gather at the intersection and say, you know what, we're going to block these cars because I want all the cars to stop, not knowing that the people that initiated the protest are actually people saying, I'd like the RCMP to be removed from Wet'suwet'en lands at an outpost near Houston.
Today I'm protesting everything in my life that bugs me. I think, we talked about the protest last week and the trouble I get in when I try to post stuff about, that people call me all sorts of names for not understanding and hate, loving oil and gas or whatever.
You actually reported from northern BC.
I did. I lived up there. And so and spent a lot of time on First Nations land. But I think what's interesting now, as we move forward and this issue continues to spiral out of control, is that the challenge that governments have in dealing with it. I mean, if you look at the Liberal government, Liberal government federally is a centrist party. So that means you have people who kind of more walks of life. You have somewhat people who might be more conservative on the spectrum, and then you have ones that might be further left. And the same goes for the NDP in BC. They have, they're not a super left-wing NDP necessarily. They have some moderates in there, and they have some radicals, and they have a whole mixture.
And so
if you're behind the scenes, and in the City Council in Vancouver, very mixed of the spectrum, when you have that kind of situation in the back room trying to make decisions on something like this, like the one argument, let's just be tough, let's send in the police. Or let's just let them run its course. I mean, that's the kind of the distance between the conversations that are happening behind the scenes that are they're fighting over. You can just imagine I could just imagine the conversations these caucuses are having, trying to find the solution that doesn't destroy their caucus. I mean, the premier has to keep his caucus tight. He can't lose that control. And he's got these people like his attorney general, who was a paid protester in a lot of ways, working for an organization that was that spearheaded and wrote the book on how to do this legally. He's
talking about David Eby.
David Eby,
just letting you know.
So he literally wrote the book on how to protest and how to get away with it, basically through legal avenues. He's dealing with this very mixed group of people, as is the Prime Minister, as is the Mayor of Vancouver, and I think that you coming to a consensus on something that is, it's ruining our economy right now. I mean, there are 1,000 people laid off from Via Rail.
40 freighters in English Bay.
Guess
what's not environmentally friendly? 40 freighters
sitting there
idling,
running on their diesel engines, not powered into the electric grid in Vancouver.
not dropping off their goods and getting the heck out of Dodge, but just sitting there. It's wild to watch. So there has been an injunction put in place at the Port of Vancouver. So things are going to be getting through.
And this, we talked about this last week, the injunction process, and
Yeah.
we've experienced a bit more of that this week now.
There's much more of that. TransLink got one, the Port of Vancouver got one, BC Ferries got one, and the BC Legislature got one. And I interviewed Kennedy Stewart, which I might like to say I did so last week as well. He answered the call on short notice and came on radio with me at the drop of a hat today. And as much as we,
43 communications staff.
people, they came through for me.
Maybe it's just because he's more open to doing interviews than the previous mayor.
Maybe, but I just want to, you know what? If I'm going to bitch about it when I'm pissed about it, I'm going to acknowledge the fact that he came on to talk about Olympics, which we'll get to in a second.
It goes a long way to building trust at City Hall. 100%.
It does.
If you hide behind the walls of City Hall or any government, kind of like the Premier did out of the gate last week, he ran down the stairs and hid. And the Prime Minister's talking points are, it's not what people want to see.
But with regard to these protests and how the municipal government might deal with, like that Broadway and commercial yesterday, that was scary. Like, it's a lot of people blocking a major intersection again. Cambie and Broadway, Granville Street Bridge, the Pitt River Rail Bridge outside of Metro Vancouver, but still, like, big disruptions, as you were referencing, and how to deal with them. And it's starting when we see protesters in Edmonton that had anti-protest people come in, right? I'm worried about this. So just so you know, they came in and took the protesters' blockade off of the tracks, taking it into
guys in a truck
and a tow truck.
Just like, adios, buddies, you're out of here. That is very, very dangerous.
Next level.
If that grows. Yeah. We are in trouble, and I think the Prime Minister needs to start seriously thinking about that as an issue of controlling and not spiraling into what could be horrible. And we haven't seen anything like this since the late '60s, really, with FLQ. So I mean, it's a problem.
And other countries deal with this all the time. We just are bubble wrapped Canadians that were like pearl clutching at it. The fact of the matter is, there are both sides of the spectrum in terms of how political protests are dealt with. But shutting down the Canadian economy is not the answer. And
it's not a good PR move, and it's not from a spinning point of view. It's really. Right. But I don't think they care. There is the many factions of this. It's not just about Indigenous rights, and it's about other stuff, about the oil and gas industry. It's about rich versus poor. It's about. This has gotten to a point where it is basically that 1%, 99% debate that we had in 2011, where we had protests and these camps all over North America and around the world.
The Occupy
movement, and that's kind of what this feels like.
But they stayed sort of, other than Wall Street, when Occupy happened here in Vancouver, it was on the steps of the art gallery. Everybody set up camp, and it stayed there.
Yeah,
that. I don't think there would be as much sort of hair trigger tension if there was an Occupy scenario over this that didn't like randomly cut off main arteries and shut down
the movement
of goods.
It's just this ability to transfer their protest to any location they want in a short period of time because of social media. It's really hard to manage. The police are just trying to figure out, and through their intel, I'm sure, where are they going next? And they're probably finding out at the same time we are.
It is. It's stressful on the citizen who needs to get from point A to B. It's maybe their life is already, affordability struck, or there's an illness that needs attention, and they have to get from point A to point B, and now they can't. That's just next level. That is pushing an already stressed out tax-paying citizen further, and that goes to the vigilantism that makes it. I fear for some explosive situation unfolding at one of these protests, because just at Broadway and Commercial on Wednesday evening, there was a yelling match that really was indicative of the frustration that we're seeing sort of surrounding these protests. So I don't know, but I think that our elected officials need to do something more than just like let it be. do something, like at least say, if you are disruptive and you're asked to keep moving on and you don't, because a protest should continue moving, it's the stopping that's illegal. If you're stopped and the police say, you need to keep moving, and you don't, guess what? We're going to arrest you. And the first time it's going to be court and $500, a la what Kennedy Stewart explained to us. And the second time, you're not going to be able to travel to the United States again in your life.
It's definitely that's definitely a good deterrent. But you know, one thing that hasn't been talked about is the amount of cost this is having. For the city of Vancouver, they have to send out the police every time in a significant way. We know, because we hear about how much it costs for 420 for policing. You're talking potentially, what, $100,000 every time this happens in a city? The city's police budget is already the biggest budget pretty much at City Hall and got a huge increase. But this could really push the budget of the city of Vancouver and any municipality and any provincial or federal government. The RCMP certainly don't budget for this, and it's gonna hurt.
Since you mentioned budgets.
Yes, segue.
Good one. Tuesday, budget day. We waited. We watched. People
were in lockup.
I love lockup.
Lockup, which is where the journalists get to go in early,
phone.
And they get all the stuff, and they get to look at it for a few hours before anybody else sees it.
And they're not allowed to have a phone, and there's no Wi-Fi, and they got locked up at like 8:30 in the morning, and they didn't come out until 1:30 in the afternoon, and it was so funny. I got to speak with Richard Zussman. He goes, I literally just turned on my phone. It rang. It was you, and now I'm on the radio. And so we debriefed a little bit on it, and. Funny that the one thing that everybody sort of keyed in on was this tax on sugary drinks.
This is classic spin, classic vision move. You know, take the story over here. Well, this other crap is happening over here. I mean, it took a couple of days before the other stories to come out related to the cuts potentially to BC Transit. The fact that housing isn't seeing the kind of money that was expected, infrastructure's not seeing the money that they were expecting.
Tax on the wealthy.
And of course the tax on the wealthy. So the sugar and tax on the wealthy.
Yeah.
Certainly the tax on the wealth is picking up on the Bernie Sanders narrative, very effective.
Yep.
Good timing for that. Although I think their cap is $400,000 and this is $250,000, I think. So,
$220,000.
And that's an individual income or is it a family income?
I think it's family.
Okay, wow.
Which is... Because
when I own a condo in Vancouver, you need to make that much money.
At least.
So that brings up the question of affordability. But the tax on the wealth and the sugary drinks. That's what everybody talked about out of the gate.
Yeah.
But now we're starting to dig in there and see that there's not a lot of good things that are in there. But it's kind of like it's a bland budget, and I think it's
necessary.
Necessary, but also because they need to figure out when they're going to have an election.
Right, but let's roll back a couple of years when the NDP government were coming in on their razor-thin green DP deal. Mm-hmm. Everybody's like, oh man, watch this. The NDP are going to spend. And in this budget, they showed that there was some fiscal responsibility for an NDP.
Okay, sure.
I
mean, how many new taxes do they have? I mean, they've taken a $3 billion profit or surplus into a $20 billion extra they're spending, and it's crazy.
You're reading me wrong. You're reading me wrong, brother. I was not throwing down the way to go on that budget. I'm just saying that it could have been a little bit more NDP-like in spending for this budget, but wanting to keep somewhat of a balance, however thin it may be.
I think that even though I would not support this, I think there is room, just like there's room in federally that Trudeau's been showing, is to go into deficits, to give the people that vote for them what they want. They need to spend more money. They need to, and I think they should have. If I was them and I wanted to keep my base happy, because I'm not going to vote for them.
Right.
I'm not their base. I don't know if everybody knows that. Might be news to some people.
I'm nobody's base. I'm all about that base.
Yeah, you're like the wind.
I am.
When it comes to voting.
No, I just don't talk about how I vote.
I think people know pretty much where I stand
on
the fiscally prudent scale.
Yes.
So I think, given that Trudeau won an election and he bringing in the biggest deficits we've had in a generation since his dad was in power, there is and what we're seeing in America and how they want to make Medicare for all, and that's going to cost $1 trillion, and people seem to be okay with that. We'll see in the election, but I think in BC, I think that there are a lot of people that are saying that budget didn't give us anything that we wanted from you, the party we've supported.
So you kind of made my point, that it's not the budget that an NDP supporter would have expected from the BC NDP. Where are my goodies? And they were like, you know what? No goodies for you this time. Because
they think that being that way, it'll help them win swing ridings or something?
I don't know why, but when I watched the budget, I was like, interesting. Okay. Where's ICBC in all this? How's that going to work out? I was curious to see the mention for education, and I was surprised that it was, brought up in a way, and we're doing things about education. It made me stop in my tracks, knowing the standoff currently underway between the BC Teachers Federation and the government on a new contract for teachers. And there was some money there that will help in the teacher shortage. Like even Terry Mooring, the BCTF president, was saying, we're happy to see that. Like there was some things in there that did kind of hit things that feel like they should have been better already, I guess.
Will PAC still have to raise thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for their kids' school to get the basics like art supplies?
Or you can talk about
sports equipment.
Not being able to get into the school that's in your catchment?
Yes, that was Brent Todderan's tweet today. I think he put out, and this happened to me.
Did it?
He and I live in the same neighborhood. Where I'm in Yaletown and he's in Crosstown, which is like next door to each other. I've lived there for 20 years. I raised 3 kids, and the youngest is still in elementary school. He's at Elsie Roy, which is right by our house. The other 2, Elsie Roy, when we moved there, they said, there's going to be a school. It's going to be amazing. School finally, after I think my middle kid was in grade 6, it finally got built. And so it's like, he was like, I'm not going to switch schools now.
I got my friends.
And so we got, so he didn't bother going. And then my youngest, we got him into Elsie Roy, but we had to do the lottery. And he lost the lottery the first time. He didn't get in the lottery. So this is Brent Todderan has the same challenge. He's got a kid. He's going into kindergarten.
And he's a city planner. If you're unfamiliar with him, he was a city planner.
He worked for the city of Vancouver. Yeah. And he's a consultant now. And his kid, he lives across the street from the school, which is kind of like me. I live like literally a block away. And what's frustrating is, and I think Brent obviously would know this, and I knew this, we know the math on population growth. We can predict pretty accurately how many people will live in a neighborhood, how many kids will live there in a neighborhood in the future by years. And so what the problem is the school system, and the school board is in charge of the schools, but it's really the province who makes the decisions on how to pay to build the construction of schools, and they move really slowly. And they just don't. And then the city's process for building anything, as we know, is slow. So we have 2 schools that are maxed out, and we have a school that's waiting to be built in Olympic Village. I live in Yaletown. Brent lives in Crosstown, which is kind of
by BC
Place.
Yeah, GM Place or
and
Rogers
the Olympic
Arena.
Village area. If you live down there, you will see that there are so many kids, and it's crazy that we have to wait this long, and so that some parents are having to take their kids all the way to the other side of the
driving to the other side of the city, in a city where you're told not to have a car, you can't afford to park downtown, you shouldn't have a car, you shouldn't need a car, you should be able to walk to wherever you need to go, or you take transit to wherever you need to go. Oh, by the way, your kid can't go to school across the street, you're going to need to drive 20 minutes to get them to the school that we've managed to get them into. Is just absurd. It's absurd. And what you were saying about the school board, because I did interview Brent today, and I've spoken with the group trying to rally support for an Olympic Village elementary school. They are trying their best.
The problem is that area, we haven't decided what we're going to do there yet.
Right. Well,
it's
we should put a school there.
Site.
But rent some office space and put a school there. But for Brent's purposes, when he's so frustrated about it, and he was talking about the VSB and how outdated the planning is that you were just referencing, because you can down to the second almost figure out how many kids are going to need school there, and the VSB wants to wait to see the whites of their eyes first.
It's the same as TransLink, same process. It's ridiculous.
Too late for the people who pay for the school tax line on your property tax. I should be able to have a school. I own this house. School's across the street. I'm going to that school. That school I'm paying for. My head explodes. Vancouver School Board on so many levels. bless the people that work there. This is not against you, but it's archaic.
They are victims of being controlled by the province's regulations. So here's another example.
Dismantle it and rebuild it.
What you can't do, which is really challenging, which I don't understand, is there is the cycle of neighborhoods. So, I remember when I was a kid, I lived in Lynn Valley in North Van. And in that time when I was a kid, it was all kids. There was kids everywhere. And we at Lynn Valley Elementary, full. And then suddenly we all kind of grew up, and next thing you know, and we were all living and we went to high school. I actually moved out, but
fewer kids.
Fewer kids. And eventually, it was just a bunch of old folks living there. There was no kids at the school anymore,
yeah.
And so they turned that school, half of it, into a museum, which is kind of painful because that means how old I am.
You are old, dude.
But now, if you go there, it's back to like huge. It's a couple of generations past when I was there, but. The thing is that we know that happens. We know it happens every time. And what it's not easy to do is to take a school and then when you know that happens to turn it into something else for a while. So, why not make it into, a community center, a senior center, or
if it's all seniors.
Whatever.
But look around in the neighborhood and figure out what the demographic is and create a space that works for the demographic. Especially when you live in Yaletown or Crosstown, where you're living in a square footage that is much smaller than maybe a generation before us might have had. And we rely on those
900
spaces.
square feet on 3 floors. I got more stair space used up than my bedroom space.
Yeah, you and I.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Anyway, so I don't know. No government ever seems to fix this problem. Every provincial government...
They kick it down the road.
Come on,
that's the unspun.
Change the way we build schools in our province.
If you want to be mad at him, by the way, you can follow him at George Affleck. At UnSpun Podcast is where you keep up on what we're doing, what we're talking about, or if you have something you'd like us to talk about. And at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y, Vance on Twitter. Let's talk not Olympic Village, but Olympics. Because...
Oh, I should have done that. I'll do it next week.
Okay.
That could be my beginning.
Instead you did look.
I know.
Look, George.
Look. Olympics.
2030. So I saw John Furlong.
20, 30, 20.
I love them.
20, 30.
No. So this morning I walked right by John Furlong, right? So this morning, this is Thursday, the 20th, and John Furlong was at a Board of Trade, Vancouver Board of Trade breakfast, and he did his keynote speech because it's 10 years since 2010. Day 9 of the Olympics, look backs. And he said, why not? Why not 2030? A lot of the infrastructure is already in place, and then it just went boom this morning. And then, of course, he walks into CKNW to be on the morning show with Simi Sarah, and he walked out and he just looked at me like, because we've known each other for quite some time, sports, right? Yeah. And I looked at him and I thought he didn't recognize me. I'm like, it's Jody. He goes, I know. I'm like, hey. And he goes, what have I done?
What, he didn't see this coming?
Well,
he didn't kind of like an idea.
He probably saw it kind of coming, but I think it's like it took over the news cycle in such a massive way today, and everybody's talking about it. And the opinions are strong. I put out a Twitter poll, and I'm surprised. It was quite interestingly split.
Yeah,
it's like 40% of people are like, hell yeah, like you. 32% of people are like, hell no, and the rest are like, maybe if it doesn't cost a lot.
Oh my God. Okay, here, let me just, first of all,
look.
It was fun.
It was super fun.
So there's that. Yeah. It was cool and it made a lot of attention to our city. It was joyful. It was a proud moment. It saved our asses from a recession in Vancouver and the region. It also, in my opinion, because I've worked as a politician and seen how fast government moves, and I think we all have this opinion, it moves a bit slow. Guess what makes government move fast? Olympics or any deadline. A deadline where they have to actually get it done. And Olympics is the ultimate deadline. The other one, the FIFA World Cup. So like the NDP put the kibosh on the old 2026, I think it was?
Yeah, I think so. But they FIFA was like, write a blank check.
They were coming, because they were just choosing the cities. So now it's going to Edmonton and Toronto, and they're great cities, but they're not Vancouver.
I mean, let's be real.
So we lost that one because the NDP wouldn't free up BC Place Stadium. Seriously? Because they didn't want to put grass in the BC Place Stadium for 3 months of the summer or something ridiculous. That's their argument. But in general, the people who are in NDP are a lot of the people that were part of Vision who were against the Olympics, by the way. Back in the day, held a referendum, if you recall that. They were opposed to the Olympics coming to Vancouver. They spent $5 million on a referendum, hoping we'd vote against it. But Vancouver said, yeah, we want an Olympics.
And then we're like front and center going, don't you love it?
Yeah. So, and then the other thing is, people are going, well, the infrastructure by then will be no good to use. I mean, yes, so what? Build new infrastructure. Well, where would we build that? I don't know. Anywhere. Langley, Chilliwack,
this is my favorite.
like anywhere. Like, hey, I'm sure Brad West would love some facilities in his town. He's probably open to it. Brad.
Go,
like,
Brad.
seriously, that is the dumbest argument of not doing something. Oh, well, it's just not possible. I mean, come on.
It immediately made me think that subway out to UBC would happen really quickly.
Absolutely.
The Jericho lands.
The jet train to Seattle, or the hell
right?
it is.
The high-speed train.
3,000 miles. We'd have a tunnel to Seattle or whatever.
But if we in 2030 had some Olympic venues out in the valley, we'd probably get a train to Abbotsford.
Absolutely. Why not? Hey, why not do it with Seattle and it'd be Seattle and Vancouver?
No.
Okay.
No.
The Vancouver Chilliwack Games.
Yes. Yes. Let's do a train to Kelowna.
Anyways, these negative
Nancy's,
these whatever they.
Oh, speaking of Nancy's, Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, Democrats, debate.
That's the worst segue I've ever.
I know, but we're almost out of time, so I got to do it.
Okay.
The Democratic debate last night. I sat down. I don't know why I have a child who eats up politics like it's Oreo cookies.
I was like that when I was a kid.
Oh, good.
Not a surprise, I suppose, to most people.
No, but I dig that.
But I used to watch the debates when
he was all in, and he knows everybody, and he's like, oh, hey, wait, who's that guy? Because we don't get the Bloomberg ads up here. So the first time Mike Bloomberg has been on a debate show. Right. So you watch? Do you watch?
Yeah, I was watching. I mean, I had to go to the hockey game. I took my youngest kid to first hockey game. We lost, but whatever. It was quite exciting. But yeah, so I watched the moment I could get it, I had to leave the house.
So did you see the moment?
Yes. Oh my God. Our show is called UnSpun, and this, to me, I'm thinking, of all the things in the world of spin that you prepare for, is a debate. You make sure you have your messaging, you have an answer for every possible scenario. You never stray from that message. You 100% stick to that message no matter what people throw at you.
You
always find a way to get out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was inexperience or bravado or idiocy. I don't know. What was he doing? This is a question about his non-disclosure agreements with women who worked at Bloomberg, and who was it that was? I don't know if it was the actual person who asked the question. I don't know if it was the journalist who asked the question or if it was. Anyways, the question was asked.
I think the moderator asked the question, and then Mike Bloomberg basically said, it's not really anything about me, and it might have been a joke that I told or whatever, and then Elizabeth Warren
she was
eviscerated
fire.
him. Absolutely destroyed him.
And his answers were just...
Well, and Elizabeth Warren is like everybody, it's the mom America needs right now. Like, she's been like, and my daddy was and my da-da-da, and I'm calling my supporters or whatever, and all of a sudden she's like, horse-faced lesbians, that's what he calls women. I was like, oh. Yeah. Like, she legit said that on the debate. I was like, oh.
And the argument she made about you're going against Trump, and who's got the same issues.
Yeah.
Another
billionaire.
And
no doubt.
It's
fascinating. I also thought that Amy Klobuchar, who has had a surge through Iowa and New Hampshire, she allowed herself to be rattled a bit. It was later in the debate. I'm not sure if you were at the hockey game.
There's some stuff going on earlier
with Mayor Pete,
about Mexico, and she didn't know the president's name, and then there was some defense of her. It was kind of a weird.
It was a really odd exchange, and she was pointing at Pete Buttigieg, saying, "You and your PowerPoint," and he took it. And he goes, "Well, I'm more of a Microsoft Word guy or Windows guy or whatever." Like it's like you guys are losing the narrative. You're fighting for the same voter. Right? Because they're the ones that are splitting that vote. And then Bernie was just hammering home Medicare for all, so loudly. He's such a yeller, that dude. It's interesting. It was
fun to watch. All they were putting their hands up.
All of them.
It was weird.
But the most enjoyable thing for me was to be part of UnSpun. I am not a fan of Canadian debate formats. Like, everybody gets the questions first, and we're going to just talk it through, and everybody gets their little time, and your light goes out, and you're all done. Last night on the Democratic debate stage in Nevada, the gloves came off. They started
finally
feeding
I would
on
argue
each other.
That's one thing Bloomberg brought to this debate. Not him specifically.
No, he didn't.
Bland, but it was the fact that people were just wanted to destroy him, and that made it quite lively. So
it felt like he left the chat. You know, when you're texting with a group of people and all of a sudden someone disappears? It's like, did George leave the chat?
That's me on Twitter a couple times this week.
Oh, don't
okay,
even.
I'm bye-bye. You are attacking in the weirdest
P.S. and by the way, if you attack George on Twitter, I'm going to unfollow you.
Well, I don't mind being. Depends how you attack.
No. I'm not going to follow people who attack you. If you want to debate you, totally. I debate you all the time.
Yeah, I think,
you and I disagreed all the way until the light came on here.
Describing people's appearance or their race
I'm not down.
or their gender. If I did that to anybody, imagine what outrage there would be if I said to somebody that there was a gender that made them irrelevant. I mean, to me, that is an interesting debate itself.
It says a lot about the person doing it, though. So I'm like, so maybe mute.
Yeah,
mute.
I don't block anybody, but I do mute people when I'm tired of their silliness.
But you're always game for a conversation, which is our last segue of the program.
Why? What's that, Jody?
The middle this week is I wrote this on Tuesday for Wednesday's Orca, because the middle comes out in the middle of the week. Go figure. But trying to find some middle ground, because I've been working radio and listening to hereditary chiefs and elected chiefs and the premier and the mayor and the premiers across the country and the prime minister and others, the official opposition, federal opposition, and everybody's kind of got their stance on what needs to happen here. And what I want is I want them to Joan Rivers this and just, can we talk? Like, get Justin Trudeau and the elected chiefs and the hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en and have them sit down, have a summit, make a big deal out of it. Give them a
but you know that they've already said no to that.
But that's what my middle is about. Is that we need a conversation. Thank you. That's all I really was fishing for.
The Orca, check it out. .ca. That's it. Thank you very much. Bye.